Hi, welcome to Experiment 8 in Data Communications Lab, and today we will be configuring network devices with SSH. So for the network topology, we have PCA, S1, and R1, and we have also the addressing table, where in R1 we will have an IP address of 192.168.1.1 with subnet mask 255.255.255.0. So same subnet mask for all the devices. Then for S1, interface VLAN 1, 192.168.1.111 with a default gateway of 192.168.1.1. So same default gateway for S1 and PCA. And for PCA IP address 192.168.1.3. For the objectives of the experiment, part 1, configure basic device settings. Part 2, configure the router for SSH access. Part 3, configure the switch for SSH access. And part 4, SSH from the CLI on the switch. So for the short background, in the past, Telnet was the most common network protocol. However, Telnet does not encrypt the information between the client and the server. So that's why it's recommended to use SSH or Secure Shell, as it encrypts all information that passes over the network link and provides authentication of the remote computer. So for the required resources, we need one router, one switch, one PC, also cables, and Ethernet cables as shown in the topology. So let's put a router 4331 here, then PC. Then for the switches, let's use 2960. Then for the connections, copper straight through. So for PC1, fast Ethernet 0. To switch 2, fast Ethernet 06 FO6. Then another straight through cable from FO5 to Gigabit Ethernet 01 of the router. Then let's name S1, R1. Then for the instruction, configure basic device settings. So in part 1, we will set up the network topology, cable the network as shown in topology, and step 3, configure the router. So we will establish a console connection into the router using a console cable, PC1, RS2322, console port of R1. Then let's enter configuration mode, terminal, and turn, enable, config T, hostname R1. Then, disable DNS lookup to prevent the router from attempting to translate incorrectly entered commands. So, no IP domain lookup. Then, assign classes the privileged exec encrypted password. Assign Cisco as the console and VTY password. So, line con 0, password, Cisco, login, exit, line VTY 015, password, Cisco, password, Cisco, login, exit. Then encrypt the plain text password service, password, encryption. Then create a banner MOTD, authorize. Then configure and activate the G01 interface on the router using the information contained in the addressing table. So exit, show IP, int birth, Gigabit 01, so config T, int G001, IP add 192.168.1.1, subnet mask 255.255.255.0, and description R1 IPv4 address or shutdown. Then save the running configuration to startup configuration file. So exit, let's check, show run, password encryption, hostname R1, no domain lookup, okay, and encrypted password, then copy on start, then destination start of config, okay. Then let's configure PCA with the IP address and subnet mask. So let's go to rename this PCA IP configuration 192.168.1.355.0. Then default gateway will be 192.168.1.1, okay. Then step 5, verify network connectivity. So we will ping R1 from PCA. So command prompt, ping 192.168.1.1, apply, okay. So next, part 2, configure the router for SSH access. So first, configure the device authentication. Let's go back to terminal, then config T, then IP domain name. So we will use ccna/lab.com, just like in the previous activity. Then the device name and domain are used as part of the crypto key when it is generated. Therefore, these names must be entered prior to issuing the crypto key command. That's why we entered the domain name ccna/lab.com. Then crypto key generate RSA. So as we can see here, the name for the keys will be r1.ccna/lab.com. Then choose the size from 360 to 248. So let's choose 124. So okay. Then step 2, configure the encryption key method. So it is already configured. Okay, that's so SSH 1.99 has been enabled. Then step 3, configure a local database username. So username, admin, secret. So ADM1N, capital P at 55. There. Then enable SSH on the VTY lines. So line VTY 015. Transport, input, telnet, SSH. However, it only allows one type of transport security. So transport, input, SSH. Then login, local, exit. Then change the login method to use the local database for user verification. So it is already changed, login local, exit. Then step 5, save the running configuration to startup config, then exit, copy, run, start. Okay. Step 6, establish an SSH connection to the router. So A, start data term from PCA. So let's go to PCA and go to telnet or SSH client. Then host name. Establish an SSH session to R1. So hostname or IP address 192.168.1.1. Then username admin. Then let's type in the password AD1N capital P at 55. Okay, capital ADM1N capital P at 55. Authorized access only. So we were able to establish a connection with R1. So part 2, configure the switch for SSH access. So step 1, configure the basic settings on the switch. Okay, S1, CLI, switch, enable, config T, hostname, S1, then disable DNS lookup, no IP, domain, enable secret class, line con0, login, password, Cisco, login, exit, line VTY, 0 to 15, password, Cisco, login, exit. Then encrypt the plain text password, service, password, encryption. Then banner MOTD, authorize only. Then configure and activate the VLAN 1 interface on the switch according to the addressing table. Exit, show IP, int brief. So VLAN 1 is administrative. So VLAN 1 is down. So let's configure it. Config T, int VLAN 1, IP add 192.168.1.11, 255.255.255.0. Then description, S1 IP 34. Then no shutdown. Then we have a default gateway. Set default gateway to IP default gateway 192.168.1. Okay. Then save the running configuration to startup config. So let's check X show run. So as we can see here, we successfully configured the default gateway, then encrypted passwords. So step 2, configure the switch for SSH connectivity. So we will use the same commands here in part 2. Config T, IP domain name, ccna.lab.com, then crypto key, RSA, generate RSA. Then let's choose 124. So we can choose from 360 to 2048. So we can 1024. Then configure the encryption key method. Press enter. SSH 1.99 has been enabled. Then configure a local database username. So then configure a username using admin, username, admin, secret, AD1N, M1N, capital P, like that. Then enable telnet and SSH on the inbound VTY lines. So let's just enable SSH. Line VTY 0 to 15. Transport, input, SSH, login, local, exit. Then save the running configuration file, copy, run, start. Destination file name, okay. Then let's establish an SSH connection to the switch. Now let's go to PCA. Then telnet client. Then let's put 192.168.1.11, 68.1.11. Then admin, password ADM1N capital P at 55. Authorized access only. So we were able to establish an SSH session with the switch. So part 4, SSH from CLI on the switch, T AD M1N P at 5. Admin config T enable, then class. So we were able to get to privileged exec mode. Then so step 2, SSH to R1 from S1. So SSH L admin 192.168.1.1, then password ADM1N capital P at 55, authorized access only. So we were able to establish a connection with R1 using an SSH session with S1 from PCA. You can return to S1 without closing the SSH session to R1 by pressing Ctrl-Shift-6, then press X. Okay, we were back to the switch privilege exec prompt. Then to return to the SSH session on R1, press blank on the CLI line. So just press enter. Assuming connection, enter again. We are back to R1. Then to end the session on R1, type exit. Then what versions of SSH are supported from CLI? So we can find it here, SSH there, then SSH V. Then so the version of SSH supported here is protocol version 1 and protocol version 2. So reflection question, how would you provide multiple users, each with their own username, access to a network device? So just like what we did a while ago, we can add each other's username and password to the local database using the username command that we did a while ago.